if you raise a 2-year round, right, you have about 2 years of runway, and you're kind of iterating once a month. That means you have 24 shots on goal. That is not a lot. You're probably going to miss them all. But if you're doing it every week, then now you have 104. And that still means each week is 1% of your time has just poof gone away. So you better hope that you're moving fast, because that 1% sneaks up on you.
Aakash, thanks for joining us, man. Season 2 of the Bell Curve. I think we're episode 3 into season 2. You are the founder and CEO of Wyndly, and I feel like I'm seeing you like all over my like Instagram and like TikTok feed right now. So I feel like I already know quite a bit about your company even before talking to you.
Yes, thanks so much for having me on, Jake and Tom. I appreciate it. You know, the algorithms are good at pushing people. So once you probably loaded me up, you probably loaded up our stuff, and then it's just pushing us on you so much. I mean, I know that's true because I looked y'all up on LinkedIn, and now I see all of Tom's updates. You know?
Oh, dang.
I'm
for
here
better or for worse.
It was kind of cool. Before we started recording, we should have recorded. You were giving us like a little master class on like YouTube and like TikTok analytics, and we got to see some of your data. It's pretty strong. So hopefully that's translates into good revenue for you, and we can show some of that for your investors on your next round if you want.
We'll have to attribute it all back to this podcast.
I'm
ringing the bell a few years from now. I'll just say,
there we go.
Bell Curve podcast.
I like to hear that.
Make sure you invite us. I would love to go. I feel like CNBC, I'm in commercial real estate, and I feel like CNBC is just always on in the background, like at work. And it's either I'm having a great day or just really depressing, depending on like which color the numbers are every day. Absolutely. Today was good. It was green. So we're having a good day.
Someone's going to get Jerome Powell on
it. Yeah. One more rate hike, baby. One more. 25 bips. That's what we're shooting for. All right, so
it's gonna get real wonky if we don't get off the interest rate conversation.
No, we're good. He definitely watches this show. Okay, so Aakash, where are you calling in from, man? What city?
Yeah, I'm in New York City.
Sweet.
I got here through a circuitous path. I'm from a suburb of Virginia Beach, which is a city about 3 hours south of DC if you're driving. Grew up in Virginia, went to the University of Virginia, and then ended up in the Bay Area in fintech. So I was a software engineer. That's just kind of what I was doing. And I started realizing that there's a lot you can do with technology, and specifically software, to drive user adoption and just get people actually using your product, right? So it's not so much software for building something new, but software to kind of increase the usage of whatever you're building, increase access, really democratize whatever you're doing. A great example of that, honestly, is Robinhood, right? They're like, man, stock trading should be as easy as opening an app on your phone. Now, the outcome of making it that easy is a whole nother podcast, but yeah, that's like a great example of like using software and kind of focusing on engineering to drive adoption. The woman I was dating, I'd met her in college, and she was up in New York City, and I realized that if I wanted to get serious about my life, I also needed to be in New York City. And so I moved to New York City, worked at a company called Parsley Analytics, kind of doing the same thing. And then during the pandemic, I was working with my co-founder, who was also my cousin, on helping him kind of digitize his medical practice. And that's kind of where Wyndly came out of. So that's how I find myself in New York City.
Man.
Nice. And for the listeners, what is Wyndly?
Yeah, so what we do at Wyndly is we fix allergies permanently. And the way we do that is we send you personalized medicine that actually trains your immune system to stop reacting to its allergy triggers. So the same way you might train for a marathon if you hadn't run before, we kind of train your immune system how to handle the pollen in the spring, or a cat if you're allergic to cats, that type of stuff. What's really interesting is that this isn't new science. This is something that you could get at Johns Hopkins or at Emory, these large research universities, but access really wasn't there. And that's why, that's why I joined forces with my co-founder, because he's kind of handling the medical side and I'm kind of bringing it to the people.
And Akash, what was the access issue? Was it just appointment availability? Is it awareness? Because it sounds, everything you described makes so much sense. But what was the issue that you guys really found in your market research?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really is just awareness and availability. You really hit the nails on the head. So first off, when people think they have allergies, the only information that they've really been told is get an antihistamine, take a pill and it'll take care of you. If you have really, really bad allergies, which millions and millions of people do, this gets you from like 0 to 50. So you can kind of like stumble through the day, but it doesn't actually make you feel better. It doesn't make you feel like you woke up and you're ready to take on the day and you can breathe and you can operate the way you want to operate. So it's like a chronic condition where you just have to think about it all the time during allergy season. And what we also found out is these chronic allergy sufferers, for them, allergy season was most of the year. It wasn't just 2 or 3 weeks in March or April. It was something in the spring, something in the summer, something in the fall. And then when your body is that reactive to allergies, you're probably allergic to something indoors too. So there's not really any escape. I mean, that was me personally, right? So like I was someone that, I had pollen allergies, but then I also had a cat allergy and a dust allergy, and I didn't realize it was solvable.
Yeah.
And so that kind of goes down. So that's the awareness angle, right? Even I didn't know you could take care of this. But then on the flip side, it's the access. So usually the specialty that takes care of this and does what we do is allergists and immunologists. This is a treatment that they'll give you. Immunotherapy, if you go in, they'll give you allergy shots. But getting to an allergist is really difficult. For me, I would have had to go to my general practitioner, then I need a referral, and there's like 5,000 allergists in total, but there's 85 million people with really bad allergies. So there's kind of a supply-demand imbalance right there. And what we really found out is people are just giving up on that path, and they're saying, forget about it. This is too difficult. I'm just going to take my antihistamine and suffer. But what we found out is with what we provide, which is this incredible treatment completely at home, we've kind of reduced how much effort it takes. And so people are much more willing to kind of try it out and realize that, wow, I could have a life without allergies. There's like a fundamental step change in how I can experience the world.
So kind of preparing for the episode, I counted, I suffer from allergies as well. So knowing you were going to come on today, I counted how many times I sneezed in the office. And Tom, guess if it was over and under 15.
For you, I've lived with you for years.
Yeah, it was like 30, dude. It was like
Yeah.
I was dying. I don't know what is going on here.
You've been in so many
Do
countries.
you get
your
like
immune
those
system
machine
is
guns?
just all over the map,
Yeah, it's all whacked out.
Do you get those machine gun sneezes that are just like boom, 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 boom? Or is it just like one big one?
No, I get them 3 in a row.
Yep.
Are you going to break down the science for us?
One of our first, what we really realized, and my co-founder is like one of the ethos, one of the reasons we started the company is because it was so hard to get access to this information because people just weren't getting in front of allergists, right? We already discussed how they were kind of quitting out on the process beforehand. My co-founder is also an allergy specialist. He was doing this treatment in his office, and I literally sat him down and I was like, hey, these are like 100 questions. Just answer them on video the way you would answer for one of your patients, and let's just put it out into the world and see what happens, right? So you asked about like market validation and market research, Tom. I'm not a top-down market research kind of guy. I'm not looking for like big analytics, big analysis on, oh, this is how big it is, this is how many people are affected. I'm just very much like, what's actually going to respond to people? Let's just put it out there and see what happens. And the very first thing that kind of went viral for us, and for us viral was like at the time just 500 views, was uncontrollable sneezing. And they're still like one of our best performing videos because people literally people literally probably have these huge sneezing fits, and then they ask their phone, "Why can't I stop sneezing?" And they find out that there's actually a medical reason behind it. Tom, you asked about the science. Really, what it comes down to is your immune system thinks of the allergens as foreign, and it kind of goes into hyperdrive trying to wash it out and kind of get rid of it. It's actually a lot more scientific than that, but I leave the hard science to my co-founder.
Well, I just love that you're solving this fundamental issue, right? There's so many things that we don't understand well, and allergies being one. But so many people think that like the first line for you is get a surgery, get these really expensive shots. But like what I'm hearing is there are other options and options that people might not ever see, might not pursue, but that might make the most sense for them, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what it is. So we saw that our customers fell into two buckets. One bucket is people who knew they had really bad allergies, but weren't ever able to make the traditional medical system really work for them. And so these are the folks who had just resigned themselves to antihistamines. The other bucket is folks who did make it to the allergist, but then they the traditional treatment, allergy shots, requires going into the doctor's office every week for a shot in the arm for 5 years, right? And that's because they're building up this resistance. They're desensitizing your immune system. I don't know about you guys, but I haven't been in one place for 5 years since literally I was in high school. And when I was in high school, my mother was not going to drive me to a doctor's office every week. So it's just that treatment, allergy shots, isn't a fit for most people's lifestyles, right? If you travel, or if you're going to move ever in the next 5 years, because a lot of times you can't find another allergist to take care of you. So it's like folks who had explored it but really hadn't committed with their allergist. And our treatment, it's a under the tongue drop, right? So we have the exact same thing you would get at the allergist, but instead of an injection, you're taking it underneath your tongue, you're taking it at home. It's just a drop. There's no shots. This is a treatment that you would get if you had went to these more academic hospitals, where you'd get at these more academic research centers like Johns Hopkins or Emory. I think it's at most places. It's called sublingual immunotherapy, but it just wasn't easy to get. Like, it wasn't easy to discover is really what it was, because you still had to get in front of an allergist. And that's the hard part. So what we found out is we're just answering questions. We're like unlocking this knowledge, and most of the allergy stuff you find online is very high level. But if you wanted something deeper, you weren't able to actually find that answer, right? So it's like, a lot of times people were just seeing that WebMD or whatever, and it just wasn't it wasn't really serving their needs as searchers or as like people with questions. And so that's kind of where we found. The way we validated that concept, by the way, is we literally went onto Reddit and saw who's still asking questions, right? Because Reddit, if you think about it, it's so bonkers that people went onto the internet and were just like yelling into the void, "Hey, I have bad allergies. I don't know what to do." And this still happens, right? So that really proved to us that like people weren't getting the information they needed. So we're going to just kind of increase access, and then we have kind of a treatment that's going to help them. So because it's effectively an underserved community. I'm sorry.
Nice. So it was like, I'm someone who like suffers from pollen, and like is just sneezy, watery eyes. Like it's kind of uncomfortable. The roof of my mouth is kind of itchy, stuff like that. I take an antihistamine. It doesn't work. I think I might be like immune to the antihistamine. I take like Zyrtec.
So why haven't you gone and seen a doctor, man?
Yeah. Well, now I'm kind of like, what do I do? I can't go to, I'm not going to go to the doctor.
Dude, you have a healthcare podcast. You have to go to a doctor.
I'm not going to go to the doctor or get a shot in my arm, kind of to your point. It's like, I'm just too busy. And so it's so I'm like one of those guys that like has a prescription for keeps, right? For my hair, like all that, like once all those patents went away, hair. Like I order all the stuff to my house. So I think this is going to have to be into the lineup. Okay. So if I buy like a Wyndly product to get rid of my allergies, because weirdly started suffering from it like as an adult, like 5 years ago. It wasn't even something I had as a kid. How long after, like, I guess, going through the therapy or the treatment, whatever it is that technically it's called, until I'm starting to kind of like see some relief?
See
Is
results.
this kind of more of
Yeah.
an investment where I'm putting like a year into it, or like the hair pills, right? Like what's it called, the stuff that's Propecia, the generic stuff that you get from Keeps now. It's like 3 months before you see anything, and sometimes I forget to take the pill. Yeah,
that's crazy. No, yeah, I can definitely answer that. So, one, it's actually not unusual to develop allergies as you grow older. Mostly, like, allergies are your body changing its reaction to stuff that's being exposed to it, right? So if you've developed resistance, maybe you moved, maybe you changed where you were, and then when you returned to your original location, your body has kind of lost that resistance. Alternatively, if you move from the East Coast to the West Coast, or the West Coast to the East Coast, you're literally in a different environment. And so it's really not that uncommon. And then, like, as we get older, our bodies do weird things. Your immune system's gone through a lot these past few years. So it's not that unusual. We actually get a lot of folks who are like, I think what's most interesting is we get people who had cats when they were young. Then they went off to school and they weren't able to have a cat in their apartment building or in dorms or whatever. And then they got a cat when they were finally, like, maybe, 28 or 29. And they're like, oh no, I'm allergic. Well, it's because your body hasn't attenuated to it yet. Those people can try kind of self-testing out this theory, this treatment, that you can build that immunity. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So what you would do, the Wyndly experience really, is you'd come to our website, and then you would purchase a diagnostic. So what the diagnostic tells us, it's an allergy test, right? And it literally tells us exactly what you're allergic to. So for me, I'm allergic to New York pollen, I'm allergic to cats, I'm allergic to dogs, and I'm also allergic to ryegrass, right? So, what the diagnostic would do, we would ship it to your home. You would take it. It requires one single finger prick of your finger. You'd mail it to our certified lab. And then with the diagnostic, we would get the information on, okay, this is exactly what Jacob is allergic to. Unfortunately, what we get back from the lab is just a bunch of gibberish numbers. And I don't want to give you gibberish numbers. That doesn't help me communicate with you. That doesn't help me give you a healthcare experience that's 1,000% better than what you'd usually get. So we actually create a custom visualization just for Jacob that you can have. So regardless of whether or not you start with us, you have something that tells you, this is what I'm allergic to, this is exactly how allergic I am, and something you can hold on to and take to whatever doctor you want.
That's fair.
Allergy tests generally have like 2 or 3 years of before you kind of need to get retested. So you have that diagnostic. We match you up with one of our doctors, and our doctors will have built you a custom treatment plan, right? So you could kind of go through your options, and then this last one we would say is like, well, we can put you on immunotherapy. Once you're on immunotherapy, it takes about 6 weeks. For most of our patients, say 6 weeks is when they start seeing results. And so for a lot of our patients who have very bad allergies, that means, like, instead of having 30 sneezes in a day, they might just have 5 to 10. And then at 6 months is when they kind of forget that they have allergies. What's really interesting is we've been around since 2021. So we've had patients that are on this treatment for 2 years now. And I was just talking to one yesterday, and he's like, yeah, I totally forgot that I had allergies. And he was like sifting through an old bag of his, and he's like, it was just full of antihistamines, and I just threw them out because I don't need them anymore. And I think that's really what we want for you to forget that, like, allergies were ever something you ever had to think about.
Nice. So 6 weeks to start seeing results, about 6 months until, like, is it allergy free, but I don't think cured.
6 months until you feel like 6 months until you feel like you don't have any allergies, and then after that, we're kind of locking in the change, right? So the science really shows that if you were just to stay on it for a year, you'd have allergy relief for a year. And then 3 years, you're probably going to have allergy relief for a decade. If you were on it for 5 years, you could probably get multiple decades out of it. But we see that most people kind of want the 3-year option. If you went in to see a traditional allergist, they would suggest you come in for 5 years.
Wow.
years.
Wow.
Okay.
And so, in terms of the space that you chose, Akash, this is so interesting. Why immunotherapy and why cash pay?
Yeah,
and like direct to consumer. It's a tough space, but yeah, what drew you into it?
absolutely. Well, I think first there's this idea that like you should do what you know. My co-founder was doing allergy treatments in his office, so it was obvious that we were going to start with something with allergy. He's a ENT, and ear, nose, and throat doctor, so we were going to do something around the respiratory system. We just didn't know what exactly. And then what we really found out is we realized that there's no reason for someone to take a chance on something new unless it's vastly better than other options, right? So and then healthcare, that's like twice as real. Like that's twice as true, because no one wants to chance anything with their health, and I wouldn't want anyone to chance anything with their health. So we really sat down and was like, of all the things that my co-founder Dr. Shah knows how to treat, what can we actually build an exceptional experience around? Something that is so much better, people would never want to go back to the traditional health system. And what we realized is that a lot of the negative experiences in healthcare are a function of insurance. Insurance gets in between the doctor and the patient a lot of the times and kind of says, fight with us to actually make us believe that you deserve this treatment. Make us believe that this procedure is medically necessary, right? And then a lot of the negative experiences just come from that. The surprise medical bill 6 months down the line, the denial of coverage up front, right? It's just a bunch of nonsense that we were able to avoid by saying, you know what, we're just going to do this cash pay. What we found out is that fundamentally aligns interests. So everything we do as care providers has to be in the patient's interest, because if the patient doesn't believe in us, or if the patient doesn't trust us, they're just not going to commit to the treatment. And we're not going to have, as a business, we're not going to have revenue. We're not going to be able to continue existing. And the side effect of that is we started taking ownership for so much that was outside of our control, right? If our email system goes down for whatever reason, that's a us problem now. We can't say, oh, it's someone else's problem. If the pharmacy that we're using for that patient is working with happens to have a delay that week, that still becomes an us problem. So what we started doing is just taking over more and more of the healthcare experience, the experience around this immunotherapy, and just saying we can make that better, and we can make it so much better that patients are going to want to work with us. And that's effectively what happened, right? So this is why we have unlimited doctor access. So Jake, we didn't mention it, but when you're on the treatment, you can text us, you can call us. We have an app. More than likely, you have like a preferred way of communicating, and we've removed all the friction necessary. So you can talk to us however you want. You can talk to us however much you want, right? So we have patients who are like, hey, doc, I'm going to, hiking this weekend. What should I do? And we're like, well, you'll probably be fine, but just stay safe. And here's a few extra stuff. Here's a prescription if you need it for a poison ivy ointment. So we've really just taken so much ownership of the care that we provide. And it's all a function of being so focused on, if you're cash pay, you can't say, oh, it's insurance's fault. It's always our fault. And so the reason we chose cash pay is because that's why we chose cash pay when we started just really digging into that incentive alignment. And then if you're cash pay, the only way you're going to get patients is going direct to consumer.
So, Akash, have you heard of Mark Cuban's kind of pharmaceutical company, or Cost Plus Drugs? Have you heard of this company? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that what they're doing? Is basically they are able to get medicines cheaply, and they go cash pay directly to consumers and just give this?
I'm not sure how they operate.
Gotcha.
But maybe that's exactly what it is, right? They're kind of cutting out the middleman. They might be buying wholesale. And then that kind of lets them control their margins. I think what Amazon did recently, which is like a $5 subscription for most generics, is really interesting. But yeah, we saw with California that the state of California is like, you know what, we're going to make our own insulin. And suddenly Eli Lilly, who actually manufactures the insulin across the states, is like, actually, we can drive costs down. Surprise.
Jeez, man.
Also, what are the similarities and differences, right? Because what I do know about Mark Cuban's business, Cost Plus, which is funny when you speak with like, just some random person at an outing on a Friday night. It feels like everybody knows Mark Cuban's business, Cost Plus, And what's funny is they say, oh, I know about that, and therefore I buy from them. It seems like very much a marketing game because you're connecting people to something they might already have access to elsewhere, but they can just more readily access Cost Plus drugs because they know the website, they've seen the ad. So how much is it like a marketing game, Akash, between like what you guys do and what everyone else does?
I think what we've really seen is that the internet has allowed people to directly access medical care. Like it used to be, there were a lot of gatekeepers in healthcare. And a lot of the times that gatekeeper was the general practitioner because the individual, the patient just didn't know what was wrong with them. They didn't know how to get their own diagnostics. Not even didn't know, they literally weren't able to. Nowadays, you can kind of, if you really want, you can order an MRI for yourself through some specialty care specialty care practices. I wouldn't necessarily suggest that. It's kind of expensive, but you could do it. And so once the gatekeeper has been removed, you can go direct to consumer and you can say, hey, this is something that you're allowed to do. You're allowed to have that direct access. Marketing is an interesting term because I think there's always been marketing in healthcare. It's just a question on who has the marketing been towards, right? Is it been towards providers or has it been towards the end users who are the patients?
Good point.
Right. I mean, there was a law passed, I think about 20 years ago, like solely around like, these pharmaceutical companies can't take doctors to the Bahamas and give them an all expense paid vacation and have all these kickbacks to encourage doctors to prescribe. And I think that's a good change in the system to make sure that everyone is keeping the patient's benefit in mind instead of a personal benefit.
Definitely. That's awesome. No, I appreciate you kind of walking us through like the technical parts of your business in terms of really what problems that it's solving. I'm going to order from you guys tonight because I am dying over here and histamines aren't doing anything. And I'll let you know how it goes. I'll post an update even on like our website and see and let people know like that's kind of worked well. But I want to know more and kind of dig into like the business of Wyndly. So like now kind of shifting gears, put your like business founder hat on. You've had the opportunity to actually go through a Y-Combinator cohort and, you're kind of now a part of this like mainstream startup culture. And you probably know a lot of folks that are talked about like in the media and different things like that. So that's kind of cool. You've even gone like on Alex Lieberman's podcast and, like your little segment did really well. And like we had, I think we connected when you were still at Y-Combinator, and then we saw your ads, and then we saw you like pop off with Morning Brew stuff. And we're like, oh crap, we got to bring this guy on, and here you are. But we definitely want to dig into like more of that stuff because like that's cool stuff too. A lot of our listeners are really going to be interested and want to know what that experience was for you. So starting off first, you start the business in 2021. I see on your LinkedIn profile, you went through a 2021 cohort of Y-Combinator. So probably pretty early out the gate from the time that you guys started your business. How do you decide to go to Y-Combinator and kind of just walk us through your experience there?
Absolutely. So we, my co-founder and I started kind of testing out the concept with his existing patients. And our entire approach to this business is like, we probably have a hypothesis on what the truth actually is, and then we should just test it. And you just have to test quickly because more than likely we're wrong. And what we've really seen is that in the modern day, that kind of feedback loop is really, really fast. So, my co-founder, so in 2020, my co-founder is my cousin. At the same time, he's running his ENT clinic. He calls me up. He's like, how do I like, how do I digitize this practice? How do I make it so my patients have to come in less? And so I kind of help him set that up. And we realize that, wait, this treatment that we're doing, this immunotherapy, let's see if we can ship it to patients instead of patients coming into the office. And that was something that was possible. Then we're like, how can we start patients instead of having them come into the office? Well, this allergy diagnostic that we were using, it's what it's clinically proven. It's been used in lots of other practices. It's suggested to use with people who might not want a traditional allergy test. Let's see if we're comfortable prescribing off of that. And we were. And so once we realized that the product was something that existed and we were able to fulfill, and it was about testing out the market. So we set the earliest thing we did, I kind of alluded to it earlier, is we went onto Reddit and we just answered questions for people to see who's going to respond to this. Will people want to meet with us? And I think we had a very simple, I hesitate to even call it a landing page. It was kind of just like book a time with a doctor. And it's not going to be a medical visit because we didn't necessarily want to jump through the hoops on, well, is someone licensed in that state or this or that? So we had a lot of disclaimers saying, like, you're going to be speaking with a doctor, but he's not going to be your doctor, and this is not medical advice. The same way you might talk to somebody if you ran into them in an airplane and they were seated next to you. It's kind of the concept we were going for. And we just had people respond to that, right? After we had about 20 people just book a time with my co-founder, I was like, there's something here. What can we do with that? To get serious, we applied to Y-Combinator. Thankfully, they let us in. And what Y-Combinator really did is it literally unlocked the business, because the network is just massive, right? I think there's 4,000 founders in Y-Combinator. I don't know how many of them are active versus inactive, but generally people are willing to say, oh, you're in Y-Combinator, you are probably working hard, take a call with me, I'll make sure you're working hard, and then I'll share my network with you. And so literally Y-Combinator is how we were able to find many more doctors who were licensed across the states. And we were able to find, we were able to talk to the right lawyers so that we could operate across the states correctly. And this is just the type of stuff that would have taken us months and months and months, but Y-Combinator really shortened that feedback loop, right? And yeah, we launched, so we were accepted late 2020. We launched in January 2021. And then I think ever since then, it's just been continuing that, like, how quickly can we come up with new ideas, validate an idea, and then operationalize an idea. And so I think that's like the approach. I don't know if I answered your question. I'm so sorry.
I like it.
No, that's money.
The question is, was Y-Combinator worth it?
Is Y-Combinator worth it? I think the answer is unequivocally yes. I don't know why people would say no. Y-Combinator, you know what it really is? If you're a good founder, if you're someone who is able to take the reins in your hand and drive it yourself and take ownership, and if you're given resources, make the most out of them, Y-Combinator will always be worth it. If you're waiting for someone to tell you what to do, to kind of teach you, to say, we know what's best and you should just kind of follow the path that we laid out, then I don't think Y-Combinator is worth it. Because they don't actually, and they say this explicitly, which is like, we're not going to run your company for you. There's too many companies that we've invested in. We don't know enough. But what we can do is pattern match you, and we can connect you with the right people, and we can provide you this huge network and our legitimacy so that when you go out looking for answers, you're able to find those answers. And I think that is kind of, the right person is able to take those raw resources and turn them into very, very successful companies. I think what's really interesting is people are like, oh, well, the knowledge isn't worth that much. Yeah, the knowledge isn't worth that much because they already shared it with the world, right? Everything that the partners are going to tell you, they've already said hundreds of times. There's literally a library. They're probably on YouTube. They've probably been quoted over and over. You're not joining Y-Combinator to get their advice. You're joining Y-Combinator for that network and that community. And also Demo Day, which is still considered a great place to kind of launch a company.
So I think for folks who haven't founded a company before, there's a lot of there's some nuance to what you said. So you're basically saying Y-Combinator is a great place if, you are basically taking full ownership of the business, its path, stuff like that. Y Combinator should be treated as basically a resource or like rocket fuel to what you're doing. And really, when you really break down what rocket fuel is, or and kind of what it really takes your company to succeed and start to see like that growth rate really start to compound, you're having to. I think a lot of founders underestimate how many problems you have to solve in succession and how long you have to do that for. And a lot of the times, I did a healthcare startup too. That was my first startup. I didn't go to Y Combinator. I wish I did because we needed more guidance. But we had the luxury of Initialize invested in our company. So we still had access to Gary Tan, who's now the president of Y Combinator. And, you know, a lot of that, of those principles and fundamentals, when we met with them on our monthly call, were like, okay, you guys need to focus. You need to do this. Here's some things to think about. And then ultimately, the thing that was the most helpful was what they would do on our calls. It would be like, okay, like you have a good idea. You're like smart enough to get to this point, but I need for me to open up my network to you, even though we invested in your company, we need to see how far you get in the next 30 days. Like go. And we would quickly kind of brainstorm, put a plan together. You know, they were always accessible via email, call, stuff like that. And then, you know, we would display, okay, here are basically our metrics. It was like a little mini board meeting, very quick. And from there, then it was like, okay, based off the results and this, and this, I'm going to intro you to this person. This person could be really helpful. This problem that you're trying to solve, this guy knows the answer. Go talk to this guy. And then literally right after the call, the intro was set up and then go. Okay. Before we had that, sometimes my days would just be like, crap, I need to talk to somebody. And it would take me a day or two just to like game plan, write the cold email, and then send it to 10 people that I thought maybe had the answer, and then do the whole dance of like setting up like a calendar invite and then having that at the end of the week. So it's like I lose a week like just trying to solve like a hard problem that my business needs to solve to get to the next step. The cool part about like plugging into these networks, these that have really strong communities around them that give you like that validation, like Y Combinator probably being the best. You know, you say Techstars is good too, but I still don't think it's as good as Y Combinator in terms of its community. Is you could solve it that day or the next day,
Right.
just because of the access that you have to folks who are going to have the answer, or maybe give you some things to think about, so you can go like, okay, I am now able to connect the pieces, the different vectors that I have in my head that I need to connect, put it all together, and then ship it. So for, you know, folks who are kind of like trying to understand the value, kind of like MBA, Tom, it's like a lot of people to your point is like, oh, what do I need to go get a business degree? Everyone who gets a business degree says the community and the network is the most valuable thing that you get out of the experience. And it's like, well, why am I paying 120 grand to like go and make friends? It's like, well, there's more to it than that, right? And I've tried to explain like why that's so valuable and how much time it literally saves you, because you need to solve 100 problems just to like get to the point where you're really starting to get some consistency and grow. And if it takes you a week to solve each problem because you need to go talk to somebody and research it, and you know, you come up with a hypothesis, you try to validate it, and then like you try to operationalize that, you got to do that fast enough so you don't run out of money. And so it's like,
That's literally it.
yeah, if you don't do it fast enough, you're screwed. You got a business. And so,
well, I think a really interesting way to put it, one, you totally hit the exact reason why people fundraise a lot of the times. It's to unlock these faster feedback loops and like just faster cycles of getting stuff done. On the flip side, you also said like it wasn't going to happen unless you asked the right questions, right? So I think you said like literally like if you had your little board meeting or your mini update and you weren't asking the right questions, they just say, come back to me when you have something worth sharing, right? When you have a real problem. You know, but that sort of validation, like that's how people protect their own social capital, right? Like why should someone open up their network to you and risk, you know, their references if you as a founder aren't going to like make them look good? And so I think that's one reason you want to work fast as a founder. I think another reason, and like this really hits it with this, you know, you're running out of money, but but I think this makes it like super, super clear. If you raise a 2-year round, right, you have about 2 years of runway, and you're kind of iterating once a month. That means you have 24 shots on goal. That is not a lot.
Yeah.
You're probably going to miss them all. But if you're doing it every week, then now you have 104, and that still means each week is 1% of your time has just poofed gone away. So you better hope that you're moving fast, because that 1% sneaks up on you.
But I think having a good, and I think a lot of people underestimate actually getting good at coming up with a hypothesis, or like coming up with ideas. It's like, okay, I think this is going to work, and here's why. Because of something I read on the internet, or like I'm talking to people on Reddit, and like they're saying that they have this problem. Or now the camp that I sit in entrepreneurship is like, dude, honestly, I only want to do things that I know work. So it kind of sounds like that's what you guys kind of had. It was like, look, my cousin and co-founder like does this for a living. Like, we know that these like treatments work, so like we can solve problems. It's just like, let's like just change the way that like people receive this, so that more people can receive it at one time. And then, you're basically like enabling a better experience through tech, and you guys are taking on more responsibility as part of the healthcare experience. So it's almost like a service business as it is like a treatment in some way, which is great. So it's like, okay, I know this is going to work. So it's like, if once you know it's going to work, then let me just put the reps in and the consistency, and then raise my standard of care, my standard of service, like whatever it is for you. And then it's like, well, at least I am not working on something that is maybe impossible, or like, like maybe like a hard tech thing or something like that. It's like,
So I think you're absolutely right. I also think it's something you can practice, like this whole like hypothesize, validate, operationalize. I do think it's something you can practice. And I think all the best founders, they have like this secret graveyard of projects that they don't talk about because, they didn't work for one reason or another. You're saying, you only want to work on things that will work, or like are kind of known. I think any business can really only, like, each startup can only take on, you can either have product risk, like the innovation can be in the product, it can be in a new market, or it can be in the business model, right? So I think those are like, I think those are the three things that you can kind of take a vast like chance on. I think if you try and do both of them, like you try and create a new market while also creating a new product, it's going to be quite difficult. Not saying it's impossible, but it's probably really hard.
Well, like that's something that big companies do, because they have like the resources and like the bodies to like do both those things. Because it requires a lot of time and money to test both, right? And it's like, you can get both right, but you really want to start like somewhere first, and then kind of grow out of that. And if you add a different product line, or like if you like are going to expand in different markets, or both, like if you're Amazon or Facebook, or something like that, then
but even they get it wrong sometimes, man.
That's true. But it's like, maybe they have a higher likelihood of success.
One may
so
argue
they can take more shots on goal with those different types.
They can take a lot more shots on goal. That is for sure. I mean, I think Amazon has done it. Like, people rag on Amazon and on Google for like killing their projects all the time. I think that's the right thing to do. Why would you invest in something that's not working? Why would you keep doubling down on things that don't matter? So I think your graveyard, so to speak, should be something you're proud of instead of something you're ashamed by.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think you should be adding to the graveyard every week. If you don't have like a business that's working, your graveyard should grow larger and larger and larger. When you find the thing that works, then it's like, okay, like let's get away from the graveyard and like now start planting some seeds and watering.
No, but you still have a graveyard, right? Like it's just different. Like the things you're experimenting on are different. Every business has, I might be wrong, but I think every business is like, if you're stagnant, you're going to die. It's just a question of how quickly are you dying.
That's good. I like that perspective. Yeah, maybe for like a graveyard of like business ideas, or like like different concepts and things I'm testing, and then you have shifted to more micro and go deep into the business that you're working on.
Yeah, because like you might have found one thing that works, but then how do you like make it work even better, right? Like, so because you never know how long the the environment that you're operating in is going to stay that way. Maybe if you're like in a super regulated space.
That's fair.
I need to get into a super regulated space, and then I can just rest on my laurels. That's what that means.
Maybe on the next company, or maybe this one. Since you're in
maybe
healthcare.
We'll see. We are in healthcare,
dude. So when we were like, okay, we have like contracts, and then we're going to go and start exploring the insurance route, like being a part of like a plan. Basically, the way it was broken down for me, for when we got in touch with people who like had done this, was like, yeah, that happens around Series B, dude. So it's like, it's a long time before you get there. I was like, man, Series B is like 9-figure valuation, close to 100 people. Like, we're pretty far away from that. Let's just keep focusing on what we're doing right now, and then keep these relationships more as like an enterprise sales cycle, which put that in perspective, which was great.
And that's also something that will kill your company too, right? Like maybe you don't have the runway to survive a 18-month sales cycle.
Yeah.
Maybe you do.
Which, mind you, Aakash, health plan sales cycles
oh gosh,
are about that long.
We have to talk off podcast.
Yeah. So talk to me about, you kind of have here in the notes, like how the very early stages of startups, kind of like pre-seed, seed, have changed recently. And then you kind of had like a note about how founders should kind of be approaching their companies, kind of given the current change in situation for these like early stage. What do you mean by that?
A startup is multiple things, right? Like a startup is a business which exists with its cash flows and its customers and its revenues. But it's also kind of like it's an image that's put out into the world so that it can raise funding, right? From VCs a lot of the time. And there was, for a certain period of time, you could say, we don't have cash flows, we don't have a business, but we have an idea and we can just raise off of that idea. And for whatever reason, the venture market was accepting of that and would invest in you just so that you could just like kind of play around with that idea, and you could raise millions of dollars as a completely fresh founder and do that. And when I say fresh, I mean like first time founder. I think that is not the case anymore. I could be wrong. There might be someone out there who is a first-time founder who's just really good at talking to VCs and closing like a $30 million valuation and raising $3 million on just an idea. But I feel like now there's a larger focus on demonstrating that you're on track to build a real business, more so in the seed stages. So you might still be able to get like $100,000 to $500,000 just like off an idea, but I don't think you're going to get 3 to 4 million without demonstrating some revenue, some traction. Not even revenue. Revenue is the wrong word. Some traction, whatever that traction might be. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's just generally my sense. I think that's what you should be doing as you're building a business anyway, is focusing on some North Star metric that's going to be good for you so that you can survive without venture funding. But that's just how I approach company building.
And I'm assuming because you took money from Y-Combinator, y'all are on the fundraising kind of track and venture capital, other venture capital investment in what y'all do, or no?
The way my co-founder and I approached the company was we have to assume each round of funding is our last round of funding, because I don't want a sour venture market to mean that our patients are abandoned. So for us, we're in a very lucky position where we can say, do we want it versus we absolutely need it.
Nice.
But that just goes back to like, how have you approached building your company? If you've built your company as like, we either fundraise or we die, and that is something you're comfortable with, and it's an intentional choice, then more power to you. For us, it had to be the other way, because it's not the way we wanted to approach changing healthcare with it would be so backwards for us to say, hey, we're going to build 1,000 times better experience and then we're going to disappear. That's not who we are. That's not what we do here.
And if you don't mind sharing, how much money have you guys raised up to this point?
We've raised $2 million. Okay. Yeah, we just announced our fundraise a few weeks ago.
Nice. That's excellent, man. Congrats on
That's
that.
a good
How
amount.
long did it take to raise that kind of cash in this environment? Was it hard?
It took the right amount of time. Took the right amount of time.
I love it.
Hard is an interesting question because I think that goes back to like, what are you as a company, right? If you have, there's always going to be a company with like the right metrics that's going to be able to fundraise. If you're able to if you're able to show incredible traction and incredible revenue, a VC is going to be foolish not to invest in you. I also think like when you fundraise, it's about finding the right partner versus any partner. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because the wrong partner is going to make you not want to do it. They're going to be a vampire on your energy, and that's not. So for us, it was all about just finding the right partner. And what we found out is because allergies are such a huge problem, there were people who deeply understood what we were trying to do, and they were able to say, I mean, I think the most obvious one was one of our VCs like listed off everything that would make us uninvestable, and then they were like, "Yeah, but we're still going to put money into you because I really like you as a team, and I think you're the best team to execute on this problem." And for someone to be that candid with us, that's something that was really important to me, because I would rather have someone say like, "Hey, this is where your failure. This is how your company gets into trouble, and this is how you stay successful." I would rather have that than someone who just kind of isn't as invested.
I kind of found that if a VC nices me to death, like they're not going to invest, and it's only the VCs who are like actually they tell you, give it to you straight, where it's like, okay, you should spend a lot more time with those guys, trying to close those guys, and like convincing them that you're the right company for them if that's something that aligns with like kind of your values and the mission of what you're trying to accomplish. And I found that those are a lot more responsive. Otherwise, the ones that nice you to death always ghost you. It's like, it's kind of wild. At least that's been my experience and experience of some of my other friends who've recently done it.
Yeah, the ghosting is just miserable. I don't think it's an acceptable, like personally, if I ever have a fund, I hope that's not something that I end up doing, because I just think it feels way too bad. The best no, I still remember this. It was like a no, we don't think, like, we're not comfortable with this business model, but they had a 10-point, like they had 10 reasons why, one, they weren't comfortable with it, and two, why they felt like we were the wrong team. And I was like, I'm disappointed, but you gave me something to operate off of. You gave me a real data point. It's like when someone ghosts you, it's like there's no feedback there, and I think that's the worst thing.
Yeah,
I don't really understand how people get away with it, but maybe I will shortly.
There's no closure, man. I need the closure. This isn't a dating app,
Where's like the swipe to get funding? Where's that? I'd probably spend way too much time on an app which was like, would you commit $5 to this idea? And it was just like swipe right, swipe left, swipe right.
I don't know. We should try it. Is that one of your graveyard companies?
No, I just know like, well, one, I missed the entire like swiping on people concept because I've known my wife since before like the app dating became a thing.
That's fair.
But
good man.
But
Akash, what is you've given so many golden nuggets here, ranging across like other topics. Like, what are you thinking about right now that's like a good nugget that you'd impart to our listeners who maybe earlier founders or aspiring?
Get good at storytelling, because at the end of the day, everything we do in life is storytelling. So whether it's sales, like Jake, you and I were talking about being in sales, right? Like sales is storytelling, fundraising is storytelling. When your storytelling is a requirement for people to take a chance on you, and eventually someone has to take a chance on you. But then you actually have to deliver, right? Don't like oversell and then underdeliver. So, but yeah.
I like that. I do feel like it's interesting how when we were raised almost to think the more complicated the concepts you understand, the more complicated you can kind of characterize something, like the smarter you are. And then it actually comes down to no, the better you understand something, the more simply you can explain it. And like the more you can just make that relatable to anyone. I still have trouble relating to my grandma what consultants do. So I have some work to do there. But at the end of the at the end of the day, I joke that we're smart people that businesses rent to help solve their problems, and it's like temporary, right? But I like that storytelling, not just from the standpoint of like raising venture funds, but also winning over customers, right? And that's like marketing, and that's consumer loyalty, that's service, right? Like every storytelling.
And I think you really you uncovered something really interesting there, which is like it's about your audience, is what storytelling is really about. Like storytelling isn't about you; it's about what your listener or who you're presenting to. What do they want? How do you get them interested? How do you keep them interested? How do you speak in a language that's going to resonate with them? I think, Carl, is it Carl Sagan, who was like the incredible physicist who was able to distill these really complicated concepts down to like a 30-minute TV show. But then that he was probably able to go to these physics conferences and talk in like formulas that I can't even pronounce. And that's what it really is. Like, I think you did a great job explaining what consultants do to your grandmother, right? Like, they're smart people for hire for a temporary basis. I think that's pretty good.
There we
go. It didn't satisfy my grandma, but I'm glad it satisfied somebody.
I'm sorry. Well, good luck with Gran.
Oh gosh, it was great. Great to have you on. I know we're kind of getting close to 8 p.m. here. Tom has a Bible study, so there's about to be hella people behind him kind of coming in and breaking bread and reading the Bible, doing all that good stuff. But man, you gave us a lot of stuff to think about. I loved that you kind of in the first half gave us all the cool stuff about like allergy healthcare, all that great stuff. And then on the backside, you really kind of dug in and gave us some really great things to think about in terms of how to approach getting the business started, fundraising, how to run the business. And couldn't thank you enough for coming on and, speaking to us, giving us some gold nuggets to really chew on, and can't wait to see you again, man. Track the process. We're gonna, as you guys do stuff, we like to send updates for founders that we've interviewed in the past and say cool stuff that their companies have done. So we can't wait to do that with y'all. We know Wyndly's going to be a big deal.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, guys.